Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the very habit you think is harmless may be silently stealing your focus, weakening your purpose, and disconnecting you from the calling God placed on your life? What if the battle you keep losing is not physical, but spiritual? Today, you're about to discover how the Holy Spirit steps into the places where your willpower fails, how he breaks the cycles you've hidden, lifts the shame you've carried, and unleashes a strength you never knew lived inside you. If you've ever felt trapped, powerless, or stuck in patterns you cannot explain, stay right here. Because in the next moments, you're going to understand why the impossible finally becomes possible when the Holy Spirit intervenes. The Holy Spirit awakens a power inside you that human strength alone could never access. A power that begins to shape your thoughts, your desires, and the atmosphere you carry within. When you allow his presence to breathe through your mind, you stop depending solely on effort and start operating in a supernatural rhythm that elevates every intention. You begin to notice that ideas come easier, direction feels clearer, and your spirit senses possibilities that once felt out of reach. The impossible begins to feel less intimidating because you are no longer approaching life from the weight of your limitations, but from the abundance of divine potential. Every whisper of the Spirit becomes an invitation to rise higher than your habits, your fears, and your old ways of thinking. You realize that you were never designed to struggle through transformation alone. You were designed to move through life with divine partnership. As you surrender, something inside you shifts, the heaviness breaks, and clarity returns with a strength that feels unexplainable. You find yourself craving purpose instead of distraction, strength instead of weakness, progress instead of cycles. The Spirit lifts you into a place where your identity no longer bows to impulses but stands anchored in power. When a person becomes truly aligned with the Holy Spirit, their inner world begins to transform with a force that reaches deeper than temporary motivation or emotional excitement. You begin to understand that true change begins in the unseen: your thoughts, your attitudes, your spiritual posture. The Spirit brings illumination to areas you once ignored, revealing how small choices can slowly drain the vision God placed in your heart. You start recognizing which habits strengthen your purpose and which ones subtly weaken your destiny. And this awareness becomes a divine gift. Suddenly the things that once felt normal begin to feel out of alignment with who you are becoming. Because the Holy Spirit heightens your sensitivity to what grows you and what breaks you. You feel a pull to honor your mind, your time, and your body because you realize they are all instruments used to shape your calling. This inner awakening is not forced. It is a gentle transformation that begins with a single desire to walk in truth. You no longer see discipline as restriction but as elevation, a spiritual empowerment that connects you to a version of yourself that God always intended you to be. The Holy Spirit becomes the bridge between who you are and who you are meant to become, guiding you through an internal upgrade that affects every area of your life. He softens the areas that once felt hardened by disappointment and strengthens the areas that once felt weak or unstable. In his presence, you learn that power is not in loudness but in alignment, not in struggle but in surrender. The more you yield, the more you feel his energy stirring within, pushing you to step beyond comfort and embrace the boldness planted inside your spirit. Suddenly the distractions that once consumed your attention begin to lose their attraction because your purpose becomes louder than your impulses. You start to recognize that every day carries a spiritual assignment and every decision carries spiritual weight. And this awareness shifts the way you think, act, and live. You feel heaven's help in places where you once felt alone, giving you the courage to break cycles you once thought were unbreakable. The Spirit empowers you to see your life not as something happening to you, but as something being shaped with intention and grace. Alignment becomes the new normal, and divine strength becomes your foundation. As the Holy Spirit takes deeper residence within you, your confidence begins to rise from a place far beyond human validation or external circumstances. You understand that your strength is fueled not by emotion but by divine guidance. Not by temporary willpower, but by spiritual momentum. You begin to walk with a quiet authority that comes from knowing you are not navigating life alone, but with a power that sees beyond what you can see. The impossible becomes possible because you are no longer limited to your own capacity. You are connected to a source that cannot be exhausted. You begin to notice opportunities opening, clarity flowing, and inner peace grounding you in ways that feel supernatural. You start to love yourself with the same compassion the Spirit shows you, allowing healing to replace shame and purpose to replace confusion. Every moment becomes an invitation to rise above the version of yourself you once settled for and step into the greatness God designed for you. The Spirit strengthens your self-control, sharpens your vision, and expands your faith until you begin to walk in a level of power that surprises even you. And in that power, you discover that nothing is truly impossible when heaven partners with your transformation. Your daily habits are the silent architects of your future, shaping the authority you carry and the strength you walk in long before anyone sees the results. Every small decision builds an inner pattern, either lifting you into alignment with your God-given purpose or quietly pulling you away from it. The habits you repeat without thinking become the blueprint of your destiny, influencing your confidence, clarity, and spiritual sensitivity. Some habits strengthen the voice of the Spirit within you, and others slowly weaken the fire that once burned so brightly in your heart. When you begin to recognize this truth, you stop treating your days as ordinary and start seeing them as spiritual investments. What you feed grows, what you starve weakens, and your routines decide which version of you becomes stronger. The Holy Spirit gently reveals which patterns support your calling and which ones sabotage it, opening your eyes to the unseen battles inside your mind. You start feeling conviction where you once felt nothing, clarity where there used to be confusion, and direction where you once wandered aimlessly. This awareness becomes the first doorway to transformation. When you understand that your daily routine holds the key to spiritual authority, you realize that self-control is not a punishment, it is a pathway to power. The discipline you build in the quiet moments becomes the strength you walk in publicly, shaping your thoughts, actions, and emotional endurance. Even small habits that seem harmless can either sharpen your purpose or distract you from it, stealing your focus little by little until you feel spiritually drained. But when you intentionally choose habits that honor your calling, you begin to experience a shift that feels like divine momentum. You wake up with more clarity, move through your day with more confidence, and make decisions from a place of strength instead of impulse. Your mind begins to align with your future instead of your past, and the Spirit within you grows louder than the habits that once controlled you. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you reclaim another piece of your identity and step deeper into who God designed you to be. The routine becomes the training ground where your purpose is strengthened. There is a spiritual weight behind every choice you make, and once you recognize this, your daily life stops feeling random and starts feeling intentional. You see that your thoughts shape your behavior shapes your habits, and your habits shape your destiny. The Holy Spirit helps you discern which routines feed your spirit and which ones drain your energy, giving you the wisdom to choose growth over comfort. You begin to treat your body, your time, and your mind as sacred because they are tools God uses to prepare you for influence. When you honor them, you honor the calling placed upon your life, and your spiritual authority increases naturally. Even the quiet moments, how you start your mornings, what you allow into your mind, how you respond to stress become opportunities to grow stronger in character. You start realizing that victory is not found in one dramatic decision, but in the consistency of daily choices. Each step you take toward discipline builds another layer of strength within you. What once felt impossible gradually becomes effortless because your habits begin to match your destiny. As you submit your daily routine to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, you experience a transformation that reaches deeper than outward behavior. Your desires begin to shift as the Spirit rewrites the patterns inside you, replacing unhealthy cravings with a hunger for purpose. Old habits that once had power over you start to lose their grip because the Spirit is strengthening your mind with supernatural clarity. You feel lighter, more focused, and more connected to the voice of God, because nothing clouds your spirit the way it used to. The confidence growing inside you is not pride, it is alignment, a powerful harmony between your actions and your calling. People around you notice the change not because you speak louder, but because you live with intention, integrity, and spiritual strength. The discipline you practice behind closed doors becomes spiritual authority when you step into the world, giving you a presence that influences, uplifts, and inspires. You rise above cycles that once controlled you because the Spirit empowers your choices and strengthens your resolve. In this place of alignment, your habits no longer sabotage your future. They build it. Your body is not your enemy, but the instrument God has given you to carry out your purpose. And the moment you understand this, you begin to treat it with reverence instead of neglect. When you allow impulses to lead you, your mind becomes foggy, your spirit becomes heavy, and your sense of direction weakens. Because you are no longer operating from intention but reaction. There is a quiet strength that rises when you take back ownership of your physical life, a strength that sharpens your mind and clears the spiritual static that once blurred your vision. The Holy Spirit works through a vessel that is surrendered and disciplined, not one controlled by emotional cravings or temporary desires. When you choose mastery over impulse, you feel a shift inside you as if the noise begins to fade and your inner clarity returns with force. You begin to think differently, act differently, and dream differently because your mind is no longer clouded by the weight of unhealthy patterns. Your confidence rises not from pride but from alignment, because there is nothing more powerful than a person whose mind and body move in the same direction. You start to sense God's guidance with greater sharpness because your spirit is no longer competing with internal chaos. Mastery awakens a version of you that has been waiting to emerge, strong, focused, and spiritually aware. There are seasons in life when you feel the tug-of-war between who you are and who you want to become, and most of that battle happens inside your body and mind. When your physical urges dictate your actions, your mind becomes a follower instead of a leader, and your purpose begins to drift further away. But when you reclaim control, when you stand firm against impulses that once controlled you, something powerful awakens within you. You begin to witness the strength God placed inside you long before you knew how to access it. This strength expands your capacity to think clearly, make stronger decisions, and walk with boldness that cannot be shaken. You stop living by temporary feelings and start operating from long-term vision, refusing to let small moments sabotage the destiny God handcrafted for you. Your body becomes a partner rather than a prison, responding to your discipline instead of dictating your behavior. Each choice you make builds new mental pathways, transforming your patterns from the inside out. With every disciplined step, you feel your spirit rise, your mind sharp, and your purpose unfold with greater clarity than ever before. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts that comes from mastering your body. Because when your physical life is disciplined, your mind becomes a stable foundation instead of a battlefield. You notice that your thoughts are no longer pulled in conflicting directions because you have silenced the impulses that once created confusion. The more you control your physical habits, the more authority you gain over your emotions, and suddenly your reactions are no longer impulsive but intentional. Darkness loses its grip because self-mastery closes the door that once allowed distraction, guilt, or emotional heaviness to enter. You begin to hear the voice of the Spirit more clearly because the noise of internal conflict is gone, replaced by stillness and awareness. You start understanding yourself on a deeper level, recognizing what strengthens you and what weakens you, what elevates your spirit and what pulls you down. This kind of clarity is not found through force, but through surrender, allowing God to guide your discipline and refine your choices. Each time you choose strength over impulse, you rewrite the narrative of your life and step a little deeper into your divine identity. Your clarity becomes your compass, always pointing you toward the person God created you to be. There is a unique power that flows through a person who has learned to master their body, because discipline produces dignity, and dignity produces authority. When you no longer feel controlled by urges, emotions, or impulses, you begin to walk with a quiet strength that others can sense without a single word. Your presence becomes grounded, your decisions become firm, and your confidence becomes steady, because you know you are no longer at war with yourself. The Holy Spirit magnifies this strength, allowing you to rise above the pattern that once held you captive and step into a life marked by purpose, not pressure. Your mind becomes the leader, not the follower, and your spirit becomes the guide that aligns you with destiny. You feel a new level of peace because inner chaos has been replaced by inner authority, and every part of you moves in harmony toward the same direction. This transformation gives you the courage to pursue goals you once abandoned, dreams you once doubted, and disciplines you once avoided. You begin to experience breakthroughs not by chance but by alignment, because self-mastery unlocks doors that inconsistency always kept shut. In this strength, you discover the truth. The greatest victory is not over the world around you, but over the patterns within you. There are battles people wrestle with for years, patterns that seem impossible to break because they were never meant to be fought with human strength alone. The Holy Spirit steps into the very places where your willpower collapses, lifting you with a strength that does not come from effort, but from surrender. When you allow Him into the areas you hide, the cycles you fear, and the habits you cannot overcome, something supernatural begins to happen within you. What once felt heavier than mountains begins to lose its power because the Spirit exposes the root, not just the behavior. He shines light into the corners of your soul where shame once ruled, replacing it with truth that frees you from the inside out. You feel a shift, not because you tried harder, but because the Spirit breathed strength into the parts of you that were exhausted. Suddenly your mind feels clearer, your emotions feel steadier, and your heart feels strong enough to choose differently. You begin to realize that nothing in your life changes until the Spirit touches it. And once He does, the old ceilings over your life begin to break. The impossible turns into transformation because heaven has stepped into the battle you could never win alone. Every cycle you could not break on your own becomes an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to reveal His power, restoring what habits and struggles tried to destroy. He rebuilds your mind by replacing lies with truth, giving you new thoughts that reshape your identity from the inside out. Where you once felt trapped, He opens doors. Where you once felt ashamed, He brings healing. Where you once doubted yourself, He establishes confidence rooted in Him. The Spirit knows the patterns that drain your energy, the impulses that steal your focus, and the behaviors that weaken your purpose. And He dismantles them one layer at a time. You begin to see progress where you once saw only failure because the Spirit strengthens your discipline and renews your desire for purity and purpose. He does not just break the behavior, He breaks the attachment, the confusion, and the belief that you cannot change. Transformation becomes less about striving and more about yielding, allowing His presence to shape your actions and motives. The fears that once controlled you lose their voice, because the Spirit speaks louder than your past. And with every step forward, you feel the weight of old patterns falling away as divine strength fills the space they once occupied. The Holy Spirit does not simply free you from cycles, He builds a new identity inside you, one rooted in clarity, spiritual authority, and inner stability. As you surrender to His work, your confidence grows not from ego but from the deep knowing that you are no longer the person you used to be. You begin to walk differently, think differently, and respond differently because your foundation has shifted from weakness to strength, from confusion to purpose. Things that once triggered you no longer hold the same grip because the Spirit has rewired the way you interpret experiences. Your emotions become balanced, your mind becomes steady, and your spirit becomes calm as the chaos within begins to settle. You notice that you no longer crave the things that once pulled you into cycles because the Spirit has replaced those desires with a hunger for growth and wholeness. Your discipline deepens without strain because it flows from spiritual empowerment, not from human pressure. Each victory you experience strengthens your belief in what is possible, and every day feels like a new step into the identity the Spirit is shaping within you. Your life slowly becomes evidence of what happens when divine power replaces human struggle. There is a supernatural transformation that takes place when the Holy Spirit becomes your strength, your guide, and your source of renewal, changing the way you see yourself and the way you move through life. The battles that once drained you begin to feel conquerable because you are no longer fighting them from a place of exhaustion, but from a place of divine partnership. You feel courage rising where fear once lived, faith expanding where doubt once controlled, and clarity forming where confusion once clouded your decisions. The Spirit empowers you to say no to old cycles and yes to a new future because He equips your mind with wisdom and your heart with resilience. You begin to trust yourself again, not because you are perfect, but because the Spirit is perfect within you, guiding every step with precision and grace. The identity He forms in you becomes unshakable, supported by truth instead of emotion, purpose instead of impulse. Transformation becomes a lifestyle, not an event, because the Spirit continues to strengthen the areas that were once weak. You rise each day, knowing you are no longer defined by who you used to be, but by the power that now lives within you. And in that strength, you walk boldly into a life that once seemed impossible, now made possible through the Holy Spirit's unstoppable work within you.